In today's world, organizations are embedding AI across their workloads, and the intent is to operate smarter, faster, and at greater scale than ever before. And as these capabilities evolve, so do the security challenges that come along with them, making AI security a foundational requirement for every modern enterprise. To effectively secure AI, it is essential to first understand how AI capabilities are consumed and integrated within an organization's workloads. Let's first break down the four main methods businesses use to bring AI into their systems, from simple consumption to fully private hosting. The first one is API-based consumption, and the second one is RAG-based deployment, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. The third one is by customizing and training an existing model or LLM. And the fourth one is by private hosting of LLM or AI model. Let's elaborate on these four AI consumption models, starting with API-based integration. And this is the simplest and most widely adopted way to use LLMs, or the large language models. In this case, your application interacts with an LLM through a secure API provided by the platform such as Azure OpenAI or Google Gemini, etc. So your system essentially sends a prompt to the API endpoint provided by the operator, and this API in turn interacts with the LLM on the backend to process your request. In this case, the API is just an abstraction layer of the LLM, and in actual, your LLM compute that is processing your request may sit in a different region or a data center than the API. API just acts as a doorway in this case. And hence, in this case, all the controls that are relevant to API security come into play, such as authentication authorization based on OAuth, key management, network control, logging and monitoring of this API. And we've taken up this API security topic in the subsequent modules in great detail. The second and one of the most important way of integrating AI is RAG integration, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. RAG is a method that blends your organization's internal knowledge with the reasoning capabilities of a large language model. So instead of completely relying on LLM's built-in training data, RAG allows you to supply your own data in the form of document, could be policies, manuals, or any domain-specific content that the model must reference to generate more accurate answers. So your documents are first processed and stored in the vector database, which enables a semantic search. And when a user hits a submit query, the system retrieves the most relevant piece of information from vector store and securely attaches that context to your prompt that you've submitted before sending it to the LLM. And this ensures that the output is grounded in your organization's verified data rather than a generic model knowledge. However, the security considerations in RAG are more complicated because you own and operate the vector database and you are feeding the policies and the documents for reference. You must ensure that documents do not expose any personally identifiable information or confidential information, and also validate that they are free of any toxic or harmful content. So there's a fair bit of security which we've also talked about in detail in the subsequent modules, so please go refer to them. The third way in which you can integrate AI into your systems is by using a base model which is publicly available, such as GPT-4 or Llama 3, and then training it on your own curated and domain-specific data so that you improve the accuracy of the enterprise workload. This trained model then can be deployed through a private endpoint for controlled use. And since in this case you're using your own environment to train the model, this method requires isolated training environment to prevent data exposure, strict data governance controls on who can load and access training data, and monitoring to ensure only approved data sets are used, and all training data sets must be scanned and cleansed to remove the PII or sensitive information. Hence, the security aspect becomes pretty important in this case. The fourth and one of the most expensive and resource intensive ways of integrating AI into your system is by privately hosting a LLM environment. So private LLM hosting refers to deployment where you operate a large language model entirely within your private cloud or could be on-prem environment. And in this approach, you have full control of the model, how you train the model, the data with which you train the model, and the infrastructure the model sits on is completely owned by you. And organizations typically use open source models such as Llama 3 or Mistral on internal GPU clusters and then expose them through internal APIs or interface gateways. This method is more common in highly regulated industries such as defense and finance. And because these industries are highly regulated, security becomes one of the most important aspects for these industries. So all the components of the model hosting the pipeline must be controlled to avoid external dependencies. And this includes securing the model supply chain to ensure models and the libraries are sourced from verified, trusted repositories. Storage of the model weights and training data must be encrypted at rest or in motion. Network access must be restricted using private endpoints or firewalls and other methodologies. You should be monitoring, logging all the aspects. So security becomes one of the most important aspects in this case. And we'll be talking about this in detail in the subsequent module.